I was on mute that whole time, wasn't I? It's great. So, having called the meeting to order at about a minute ago, we have myself, co-chair. We have Rhiannon Alley, Sandy Fortin, and Mike Summerer, guests Jeff Nevins and Dan Demerit. I wanted to start out with the review and approval of the prior meeting minutes. And did everybody on the committee get a chance to review those who received them? Should have been everybody.
Yes.
Unless there are any objections, I will move that they are approved.
I'll second.
Okay. Motion and a second. Any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Perfect. Okay, let's, unless there's objection, jump down temporarily, at least to other business, which has expenditure authorizations. Zoom, we talked about this last time. It was after tax $8.89 more than we authorized. So that's here for just good bookkeeping. Outreach event refreshments. Last time we authorized 250. We used a little over 200, not knowing how this one's going to go. Different night, different town. I would like to just have a little extra wiggle room in case we get a lot of RSVPs. So I would suggest 300 for that. We already have some printing and mailing expenses authorized, but since we're authorizing, I figure we may as well authorize again. And then this was something that Sandy had proposed. I think you had proposed actually 2 meeting owls, one in Winter Harbor, one in Gouldsboro, but I figured we'd start with at least one. And that would be something that we could use at our first or our next meeting at Hammond Hall. So for our outreach. Are there any other expenses anybody can think of that we should be looking at? Sandy?
Yeah, with this pop-up event that we just had at the Community Resilience, we did end up having 1-pagers printed and sent for the program. I have not received the actual bill yet, but Dan might, I don't know if Dan received a copy of it or not. So there'll be an expense for printing of 100 copies of that 1-pager.
Okay. So let's put another line here.
I've not received the invoice yet.
Yeah, it was not in the envelope.
What would we
I'm
call
sure
that?
I'm sure it'll be under $5,000 for those 100 flyers. So yeah.
What would we call that? Informational brochure?
Yeah, 1-pager. You cannot see that. I don't know how to change that.
Information 1-pager for, that was on 5/21.
Yeah, and we'll end up using that for the Winter Harbor event, for the outreach event. So we have extra, yeah, we have plenty to share.
I think, was it a professional piece or was it, okay, so what do you think? Put in 250 there? I don't know.
That'd be high. That'd be high. I'd put 100.
Okay, 100, there it is. Okay, any other pieces? I may come back to this later. We can certainly vote on these now. Of course, we can certainly vote on these now. There may be something we want to authorize additionally, but for right now, let's get these in here. Is there a motion to approve these expenses as presented?
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
motion and a second. Any further discussion on these items? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Hold on just a second. I need to see. Send a message so somebody knows why I'm not answering the phone. Also, under other business, it wasn't written, but I had a thought process because we're heavily leaning towards the municipal model. And there are some steps involved in that. And there's, looking at the DBU model, there's the interlocal agreement, but that interlocal agreement is with a nonprofit organization and the towns. And it occurs to me that I'm not the expert on this, but if it's something that would make sense to, and it's not particularly costly, create a nonprofit, that we could certainly do that. And if it's not costly, we're not out anything if it doesn't go that route. And we're just that much further ahead if we get to that point. So just want to throw that out there to you, Sandy, Rhiannon, and Mike, to see what your thoughts are on that.
It would certainly save time to have something in place, and I know that you can set up a nonprofit if your revenue is below a certain amount, fairly simply. If your revenue is much higher, as I would anticipate ours would be once our uptake rate went up, then you get into the paperwork requirements and registration requirements that are much more onerous. I don't know how easy it is to flip the switch and grow into the big brother of the small version.
Right.
But the small version is very easy to do. I know that from some other clubs I've been involved with.
Certainly, we'd be pretty small initially, that's for sure. I don't know if there's anybody who's among the consultants here who have any idea about that, but if so, feel free to speak up.
Roy, I've had a little experience with it. If you're going with the DBU model and you're going to go in that direction, I don't know if you've had many discussions with Danny Sullivan. I would suggest that it might be good to invite him to one of your meetings so that he can sort of walk you through the steps that you have to go. If you haven't already done that, you may have already done that.
He's attended a couple of our meetings, and he's given us the documents. He's given us the bylaws and the interlocal agreement, and I don't think he's given us the grant application that they did for broadband grant writing purposes that they had for one of their other more recent towns, but that is something that he's mentioned that'd be available as well. But he hasn't really said which way, chicken or the egg, on the formation of it yet. So we can certainly look into that a little further.
Yeah, I haven't had a lot of experience working with DBU, but I know they do have a process, and it's probably a good idea to get Dan sort of nailed down if you could, so you can understand what steps you need to take to get yourself positioned so you be in, be able to go in that direction.
Okay. Any thoughts from anyone else?
Yeah, I have no expertise in this area other than setting up a nonprofit organization myself, just knowing that we've got to have the support staff to manage that and financial advisor to manage that. So that's my 2 cents on it. I don't know enough about the DBU process and transferring into a larger corporation or larger nonprofit.
Right. I'll reach out to Dan. It's been a little hit or miss lately. I think he's probably pretty busy. So, but there are a couple other people, Susan Burke locally, I know, has a nonprofit for Hardy's Friends. I'm pretty sure it is. And I'm not sure if I think there's a separate one for the Schoodic Food Pantry. So I'm not anticipating certainly a lot of revenue until we have a project anyway. So who knows, but I'll reach out to them, and then maybe, again, maybe we do another meeting some point just to authorize if it looks like that's the sensible thing to do.
Roy, the one other thing, just one other thought. If you're going to do this on your own as a two community, and you were talking about the interlocal agreement, probably need some legal advice there.
Yes,
And, you know, I've done that with some other towns, and the other towns have sort of leaned on their own legal counsel and also got advice from the Maine Municipal Association on developing that interlocal agreement. So you can go off and create that utility district or communications district that you need to set this up.
right. And it probably in the end, I mean, I'm sure if each town is going to be involved in it, they would probably have their own lawyers look at it respectively. Be really simple if they use the same lawyer, but I don't know if they do. But I think I'd like to see that happening sooner rather than later. We've got the Down East broadband example, and I think we can probably tweak that in advance of involving legal counsel to try and get it where we think it needs to go. So,
Roy, I would just make one suggestion about that. I know Rob Nichols has been very involved in the Goldsboro Shores, and he is a Summering resident of Grindstone, so he's very involved. He's sort of a community, extended community of Winter Harbor and would bridge both paths on that if he could do some of the groundwork for the efforts.
okay. Can you say that name again? You remuted. You remuted, Sandy.
I believe it's Robert Nichols. Is that correct, Mike? Does that sound right?
I think so.
Okay.
Okay.
I may have the first name wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's Robert Nichols.
Okay. All right.
Roy, it's also, it probably, we can help you find another community that's done this.
Mhm.
And, you know, rather than go and start at square one, if they've already done this, there's probably templates, there's things you can follow that take a lot of the steps away from you and make it a lot easier for you to get, you know, the legal foundation that you need.
Well, certainly, certainly any information that you want to provide, we will gladly accept. That would be helpful. I personally, I'd like to see this process go as quickly as possible this year, so maybe we can take advantage of that round of funding that's going to be opening up the application in August. I don't know if we can make it, but it's certainly worth trying. So any shortcuts that save time, that don't impede quality, I'm happy to take. So, all right. I put it down under other business. I was mentioning this to Mike. Mark Sobczak was going to try and join us tonight. He said that this would probably be his last meeting because he's having further medical issues that is going to prevent him from being a participant. So I'm gonna take that as Mark is stepping down off the committee. Where you, Sandy and Mike had some people express an interest in volunteering. Unless anybody's objecting, I would certainly open up and send reach out to those people and see if anybody would be willing to step onto the committee. And that,
Roy, I wonder if it might be useful to reach out to some previous members of the committee that have dropped off. The enthusiasm was high at the beginning and then kind of fell off when our pace of progress was less than what they'd hoped for, but they might be willing to jump back in right now.
well, I know Roy Groover requested the PowerPoint, so I can reach out to him as well. But even so, it probably wouldn't hurt to see what the interest level is from those volunteers, just in case anybody, maybe we want some alternates too. I'm not sure.
There were 8 volunteers, there were 8 people that signed up as volunteers. 3 of them were, or are registered in Gouldsboro as voters. So that was really helpful.
Okay, I'm gonna jump back up to update of action steps, D. So these are some properties that the towns respectively own. And these are the ones that might have some utility for us. I'm still working on meeting with somebody in the assessing office in Gouldsboro to see about some of the Gouldsboro ones. Bob is trying to join us. Let me resend Bob the agenda. Forward. All right, we'll see if Bob gets to join us. So, does everybody see that list of property? All right. I thought it might be useful just to go over this briefly, just to let people on the committee know what we're looking at. 6 Newman Street, that one's pretty easy. It's right between S&S and the Bickford property. So just for visual aid, let's put the layers on here. So that should be this little strip right about here, as I understand it. And to me, this is actually the best location in Winter Harbor if we have to locate anything. Just throwing that out there. I'd say it's about as central as we're going to get. The town dump, I'm not real thrilled with that idea, and there's no direct utility connection there, so we'd have to probably run a little extra power and fiber in the end. So, and I don't want to be at the dump, nothing personal. The other piece is this stretch right here between Summer Harbor and Gray Road. Well, it's actually Main Street. That's Google listed as Summer Harbor here. There's a 15-acre piece here, basically. It's not a bad thing, but I still feel like this is probably going to be the better spot for us over on Newman, if we have to locate anything there. So just wanted to show you those. In Gouldsboro, let's see, actually. If we get over here, so my Gouldsboro people, there's a cemetery here, isn't there? Does anybody know? It doesn't look like it from this angle, but supposedly there's a cemetery here. But there's a good chunk. This is the opposite. This is Andy Sankey on the opposite side of the road. So I'm not sure that that's a viable solution right here, but it's something we can keep in mind as a fallback. DOT lot up on Route 1, to me, if we're going to have a connection to the 3-ring binder, that's probably the best place for it. And I think that
everything's right there.
Everything's right there. There's space. And I think that's a really convenient location. Alternatively, if that doesn't work, Eve has said out by the transfer station, there is some additional some additional property that might be usable, but that pushes us out a lot further than,
Longer run off Route 1 and
right,
great distance from both towns.
exactly. But that's something that might be usable in the worst case scenario. Looking at some of the village areas, this piece here on Gouldsboro Point Road near Reading. So there is a little triangle right about here. And actually, this is, which one is this? Is that 43B? No, 33. So I did go through like the nerd I am who loves maps. And did I say 24? Yeah. So Reading Road here, Gouldsboro Point, little triangle. Doesn't look like it's got anything really on here. My only concern would be wetland because that area is a little bit damp. But otherwise, if we needed something small, because if we think back to the consolidated response to our RFI, there were fiber distribution hubs, pretty, I'd say probably 6 or 7 of them in their proposal. So just thinking along those lines.
Right.
Yes,
Question about this. As we're thinking about this, is it possible to sort of have some vetting questions as we think about why they're a better option? That last map just made me think about if we do think about expanding to other towns, like that one super close to Steuben. To me, somewhere along where the transfer station makes the most sense because it's closest to the 3-ring binder. But as we sort of vet, what are the best options? Just something to consider as we go forward.
yeah, I mean, that's certainly a piece of it. I've ruled out about probably more than half of the Gouldsboro properties. This is what remained. And most of those were because it was either landlocked or is in use for some other purpose. And, but yeah, but on that side of it too, with Steuben, if they ever did want to join in, Steuben is also on the 3-ring binder. So we would probably locate something in Steuben to hook in over there. But we'll be doing the same process over there as well. We'll be looking at these properties, and I know Millard Billings here in town, who's also, I think, the code enforcement officer in Gouldsboro right now. He suggested that we talk to Cherryfield. Now they're not on the 3-ring binder, so if they ever did want to join in, they would have to, we'd have to figure out some longer run to make that connection. 43B 22 Crowley Island Road. This is obviously down in Korea. And this one is a little sliver. There's actually 2 pieces that straddle the intersection of Mill Pond Road. So there's a little piece on this side and there's a little piece on this side. I suspect we might still be within shoreland zoning over here, which would make it probably not useful, but you never know. So I took off this one from the list, but this one I left as a possibility. Lighthouse Point Road. There's a footpath to the shore over here in Prospect Harbor. And I'm not sure right offhand which one of these properties it is. Probably this one here. This looks like that might be a path right there. But that's a sizable town-owned chunk of land, and Eve didn't think there'd be any reason why they couldn't use some of that if we needed to locate something there.
That has been controversial in the past. Just for history, the clam lab was considered there for a while, and
Okay,
a budding neighbor opposition was extreme. And it is a non-conforming lot. It's relatively narrow.
Mhm.
It can tolerate that footpath now and parking for 3 cars or so
okay,
for the clammers, but there isn't much space left.
all right.
And well, it's a little farther away for utilities, but opposition from abutters related to clearing that land would be anticipated.
Okay, well, and that may be very well an unusable spot, so we can think that, we may think that one's not really viable. And then the others are all over in Korea off of Paul Bunyan Road. I'll cut it out. And I think the first one is, let's just go back to the drive here. 52. So I'm not 100% sure how far in this actually is, but let's see if we can. I don't know. I think it might be. I don't know. But in any case, suffice it to say, there's a little sliver here right on Paul Bunyan, again, on the water. I'm not a fan of putting it on the water. I'm not sure why. There's another one that is also on the water off of Paul Bunyan Road. And there is one that is not quite on the water, which might be more practical for our purposes and remove less valuable real estate from the town. So just wanted to go over those with people. So you have an idea that we have some general possibilities of land that's already owned by the towns if we need to locate something as we're going through this process. Outside of that, I don't really have anything for Gouldsboro or Winter Harbor specifically. Before I move on, any questions on what we've gone over so far? Okay. Information gathering, beginning to draft an RFP. Now, there's a suggestion that we can lean on Mission Broadband for some of this. Jeff.
Certainly can. I think a lot of your, potentially a lot of your questions and the work that you're doing could be kind of rolled up under the RFP. You find a good partner, they do a lot of the things that you're just doing, trying to find locations for, you know, central offices and, you know, those kind of things, and where the equipment should go. And I responded to an email that I saw, I think it was last week, and it looked like your sort of your wish list, if you will, was very similar to the city of Eastport, who we are working with right now. And we're in the process of drafting an RFP and going through the review process with them. And I just instantly said, well, you know, we don't have to recreate different, you know, RFPs. They all should be essentially the same when the end result is similar. And we might be able to very quickly and easily, with some adaptations based on anything else that you might particularly want, draft an RFP for you, and so you can look at it and get started. I think it's an important first step in finding that partner that you need to build the network. And then also that partner can help you with some of the finance questions, the utility questions. You know, Are you gonna form your own utility? Will you partner with DBU? How you're going to ultimately, structure the network that you need and want in your community. So I guess I have a lot of questions that probably we ought to take up on at another time and maybe not do it right here, but I think what I'd like to do, if I can get Eastport to say yes, is share the draft that we have with them, with you
Okay.
folks, and have you take a look at it and see if it, meets. I'm sure you probably have in your mind sort of an expectation for what an RFP is going to look like based on what it is you want to do. And it'll be a good opportunity for you to take a look at theirs and say, this makes sense for us. And with, if we tweak this, we tweak that, it'll work for us and we can make it work. I think that might be a good place to start. It's kind of jumping over sort of many of the steps that we would normally take with a community. But we're jumping to where you want to be. And I think with time of the essence, and if you're thinking of trying to get an application in the next go around when MCA has their next allocation, and I've heard it's August. I don't know if it'll be early in that. I hope not. I'm actually hoping it's not August. I'm hoping for September, and more flexibility in terms of the timing, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done to get many of the communities that we're working with ready for that next step in putting an application together. So I think that's what I would suggest. And Roy, what I'd like to do is go back and create a list of questions for you
Okay.
and have a discussion so that we can start beginning to sort of adapt it to what you folks want.
Sure. Well, I mean, if you have any questions that would be helpful to put in front of the committee right now, I mean, that's part of what this meeting is about too. So anything that you want to get out of the way that would be helpful to discuss now.
Okay. Do you want to explore all options? Not just the municipally ownership model? What's the committee's feeling on that?
I'll just go first by saying I've been of the opinion for quite a while that what seems to be the best fit is the municipally owned model, but we have two responses to our RFIs, one from Consolidated Communications, one from Axiom, that present more of a traditional ISP route that's, work with the ISP to build out their network, and then you have customers of the ISP. I think it's important to at least find out what those proposals would look like, so we have something to compare to for our communities.
Okay.
Sandy, Mike.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. Having the comparison, I think is going to be critical in selling the final product.
And there is this timing step. I'm sorry, I'm doing 2 Zoom meetings at the same time here, and I don't recommend it. But one of the steps is to convince the town to move forward with a particular model. And both towns have a end of May, early June annual meeting, and it's an extra set of hoops to jump through to go through a petitioning process and have a town vote to support something. If we're going to try to hit an August or September timeline, my thinking is we're going to have a special town meeting to make it happen, and that's going to require some more work.
Anything that you want to add, Rhiannon?
No, I think that I totally agree with Sandy that I think that having that comparison will be essential to convincing.
Yeah, that was something that we went through the discussion with the city of Eastport, and they were in a similar position, and our recommendation was that they would look at all options, because as you try to put this in front of your community, you're going to get questions from people about, well, did you look at this? Did you look at this option? Did you explore, the ownership option and a ISP partner who would own it? And the only way to answer those questions is to have gone out with an RFP. So you can say, yes, we have, and here's what we found, and here's the reasons that we chose what we did. And here's why we got to the recommendation that we ultimately landed on. So we wrote their RFP, so it indicates that their preference is to have a municipally owned or a communication utility district owned network. But they were willing to listen to all other proposals and consider all other proposals. So that's the way we wrote it. And it sounds like this would be similar.
I would certainly accept any proposal of any particular model. To me, I mean, Axiom and Consolidated provided a sort of a halfway point as well, where they would build the network for the community and then have an exclusivity period. To me, if we're going to go the easy route, we'll go with the ISPs and let the ISPs deal with it. If we're going to go what to me is the quality route and the local control route, we'll go with the municipally owned model. To me, it makes sense to either go one extreme or the other. Going in the middle doesn't seem to really get us the benefits of either one. It's not easy, and we don't have the control in the end. So that's just my feeling, is that it should be preference for the municipally owned, but we'll consider the traditional ISP model as well.
Okay. So it sounds like the Eastport RFP is in line and sync with what you're saying, Roy.
Okay.
Um,
Sandy asks, is Eastport working with multiple municipalities?
They are open to it because of their situation and their desire to move this fast. They want to get an application ready for the next round. And I think the most expedient way is for them to go on their own right now. But they certainly are. They have had discussions with the Passamaquoddy tribe at Pleasant Point, and then further up the town escapes me now, but there's a town on the other side of the reservation, and they've had discussions with those. So they are in a position where they'd be willing to partner and do something like that. I don't know if they're going to be able to get everything in line so that they can put an application into the next round. It's really a short timeline, and there's a lot of things, as you folks just went through it. You got to go back to the town. You got to get a vote. You got to get support. You got to build for that support. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And an RFP usually takes between 6 and 8 weeks. We'll have to condense it in the case of Eastport, but even if you can condense it, 4 to 6 weeks is probably a reasonable amount of time to go through the exercise, to review the proposals, and then make a decision. And do 6 weeks out from now, you're going to be bumping right up against it. It's going to be a scramble.
Yeah, and then you'd have to have your special town meeting to get the support in 2 different towns where there wasn't a lot of, the key to being successful in these things, and it's already been touched on, is having that process where you make the decision collectively. There has to be a process that gives the gives a sense that the community is behind the decision and supports moving forward. And that's not easy to do in a hurry. Going from a committee of a small committee with some people with some awareness, you've got to have some steps built in where people had a chance to give input into what the right approach was, so that it's not a decision made for the community, but a decision made by the community. So that,
Yeah, and do you have the sense that you have the support of the select boards in the towns?
The Winter Harbor Select Board is a little hard to gauge. I have met with one of them with any sort of relation to broadband. They're missing they don't have one of 3 of their select board right now, and the other one wasn't at the meeting that I was going to try and talk to them at. So,
Okay,
but I don't think that they're going to be opposed. I think the Gouldsboro Select Board, I have a very good relationship with the majority of the Gouldsboro Select Board, 4 out of 5 of their members. And I think they would be in support of this. And one of the things that we'll be going to do is I am gonna, once we get through probably this week and maybe the next outreach meeting, is try and set up some meetings, attend some select board meetings, and just brief them on what we've got for information, what we've seen for community response. Because so far the community response has been pretty good. At the April outreach meeting, we had about 45 or so people attend. When asked, nobody said they wanted an ISP, a traditional ISP route. Everybody who expressed an opinion was leaning in favor of the municipally owned. So that's helpful, and it'll be interesting to see if our next outreach meeting has a similar response. So far, and Sandy, you and Mike, I think you said there was a very supportive response to the idea of the municipally owned at the event you were at on Sunday, correct?
You're muted, Sandy.
Yeah, Mike took some really great notes about that and going over that part of it. I think there was good support for that. And we had I think it was over 28 participants from Gouldsboro. So that was a good conversation that we had, more of a workshop style, and just sharing pretty much just a few pointers of the PowerPoint that you had done with Gouldsboro earlier. So that was a very effective way to reach people.
I've got one other question. Have you done, I know mapping is always a question that's asked of every committee, but have you done mapping to determine the number of eligible locations you have in the communities versus the ones that are not eligible, and how that might work in terms of a financial model?
Eligible meaning based on the grant funding that's coming up?
Yeah, and it's the least served, so you have to be below 25 over 3.
Yeah. And what does it go to for the second round, the BEAD funding? It's more restrictive at that point, I know.
It is. It's the same, Roy, as what
Okay.
they used in the last round. The MCA used the least served criteria, which is 25 or 3, less than that. And there are 2 tiers in the BEAD program, but my understanding is they can't get to the second tier until they fulfill the first tier.
Okay. I know Kendra Jo had said that there are definitely different levels of eligibility for service between the 2 rounds. So we haven't done anything concrete in the way of mapping yet.
Okay.
So that's definitely something that needs to be done.
Yeah, and that's something we can help you with. We're one of the we have access to the mapping data. So we can do it. And, you know, there's a long story there, and I'll give you the short version. There has been an appeal process for locations that may be wrong in terms they may show that they have more than they have. So there's an appeal process going on, and there will be new mapping data that will come sometime close to the end of June. But we can show you what we have at this point, understanding that it may change a little bit. I don't know how much it'll change, but that gives you a good footing, because if you have half of the locations in your two communities that are eligible, then you theoretically can ask for half of the cost of building the network in the two communities. So
Would it be half of the cost, or because there's that community match?
yeah,
So if the community match is 25%, that half would get 75% paid for? Is that how that would work? And then 25% for that half from the community?
it depends on the how much the match is. And
Okay.
you're located in Hancock County, right?
Yes.
So you have funding that is available through the Hancock County Commissioners. So, you know, we can help you with that. We've been working, we actually are working with the county commissioners in helping them get information and collect the things that they need to make decisions around that. So we can help you with that in terms of what the allocation, because they have a formula for determining the allocations for each town.
Mhm.
And we can help you with that, because that's all part of putting the funding package together in terms of, you know, do you need money that would come from the communities themselves, from the town budgets? How much you get from the commissioners, and then how much you are going to be able to get from the MCA through the grant process. So that's how you sort of put this all together, and you got that funding scheme, and you know what you're up against. And that also helps you answer a lot of questions that you're probably going to get from the select boards and the community members. Is, the two questions you get: what am I going to get as a resident? What am I going to have at my house? Am I going to have, a gig over a gig? And secondly, how much is it going to cost us? So those two questions, always come up, and there's always a good, round of debate around the cost and who's going to get what. So once you get those things set up, and we can help you with that. We can help you get to that point where you have the costs broken out, and you know what you're up against.
Okay, well, that sounds good. Like I said, well, like you've said, no need to reinvent the wheel. And if there's a process that you've got that iterates through all the steps we need to take, I'm happy to follow an established process rather than try and figure it out.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can be creative, but if we don't have to be, it'll move things a lot faster.
Yeah. So unless you had any other questions for right now, you'll put any follow-up questions together, and you can send them to us, and we'll get you some answers.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Sounds good. And I'll get back with my colleagues at Mission and get back to you, and we'll talk about some timeframes, and we'll get to work.
All right. I appreciate that.
All right. I'll drop off so you all can talk.
Okay.
And I'm going to head to a Little League game.
Enjoy.
Thank you. Bye now.
Well, Mark, welcome. let's just continue on through here. Did anybody have any comments about the RFP process that they wanted to make? I'm happy to see what Mission Broadband can put together for us for next steps. Communication plans. So next outreach event, I erroneously, again, at least the next meeting is in the future this time, but it's actually a week after that. It's on the 13th that we're penciled in for Hammond Hall. And that is the same day as the budget validation referendum, but starting at 6:30, I look at it, most people will have already had a chance to go vote. And if there's a conflict, we're going to record this and we'll put it on YouTube so people can go view it after the fact as well. So this is the information that I've put together for the mailing. It's pretty similar to the previous one. Updated date, time, location. Again, open to all residents, noting it's predominantly the same as our first outreach event, the basics, and anticipating at least one more outreach event this summer, as we mentioned, to try and capture summer people, summer residents. Sandwiches, pizza, snacks, and beverages. I took out the wraps since we can't get those. Still asking if people can RSVP. That's good. Let us know if there are a better day or time. Same contact information. I put a couple of notes on here. I just condensed the date and time into one big bold line here. Dates and times. Then parking note, because street parking is a little bit sparse over there. I don't want to, I'm not going to tell people to clog up Forest Ave with parking. Who was it? Was the person who's sort of acting in place of Colt right now suggested that parking at the Bar Harbor Bank lot would be probably a safe bet for people. And also what's that?
Anna Wolf.
Anna Wolf. You mean the one acting for Colt right now?
Right.
No, I'm thinking, was it
Lisa
maybe
Salisbury.
Lisa? Yes, Salisbury. Yes, that's the one. And then the note about the remote meeting access, just the meeting ID and the passcode. If people want to join from Zoom, they're not going to be able to click the paper anyway. So if they want to join in that way, we've had one request last time from a resident to have Zoom, and this time we'll be able to. So we'll make that available. And if we can, we'll use a shiny new Owl camera that I can go ahead and order, and then we can get reimbursed for that. And just a note about it does take place on the validation vote. That'll be recorded and posted on our YouTube channel later. So does that work for people?
That sounds great, Roy. I was just going to ask, will this get emailed to our broadband communication list?
I'm going to send out not this exactly, but the same kind of information to the people that provided their email addresses. And so that they're aware, if they attended the first one, it's going to be pretty similar. And just to have some, I'll send out what little updates that we have, but we haven't got much new information yet. So, but yeah, we'll send it out to those people as well.
And you and I can connect off screen about the new emails from the outreach event on Sunday.
I've already added those into the mailing list too. So I do need to connect with you about getting you the credentials for that account. And it's not really here. I should have put this up under information gathering, but these were just the responses I wanted to go over real quickly from Dan Sullivan. He's got about 1,000 customers because this was asked at the outreach meeting. And when you pair that with the answer further down here about the portion of the subscription that is returned to DBU, that is 25, then you can roughly estimate that DBU gets about $25,000 a month, if my math is correct there. That goes to pay back the loans and for the network operator and for the maintenance reserve. So that's where they sort of stand right now. And of course, they've got a backlog of customers waiting to sign up. I'm not sure if that $25 is a flat regardless of the customer and the service level. For example, I'm not sure if there are people with gigabit service that would be, that say it's $100 a month. Is it still a $25 fee or is it proportional? That's a question that we can ask, but I think this gives us a good baseline at least. So, Sandy.
When we do have enough information around that, I think that would make a nice one pager for, again, selling whether this is a good choice for us, and Dan can help with that at some point, once
Yeah.
we have enough clarity with that.
And this was just getting clarity on who backed what and talking about whether there's cost sharing going on. So it seems like as he says here, all the funds, all the amounts that come back to DBU go toward all the town loans. So for example, if we have a significant take rate in Gouldsboro and less of a significant take rate in Winter Harbor, it sounds like the money comes in, then gets distributed to pay both loans off simultaneously. So that would be helpful, I think, in our case, because I think we are likely to have a lower take rate in Winter Harbor than Gouldsboro by a fair margin. Let's see. They didn't say he didn't have a target for the maintenance account, but he did mention for the first time, I think, that we've seen in this discussion that there is insurance as well. So so those are just the responses that we had so far from him. Time authorized expenditure. So I think that's pretty much everything for the communication plans. Was there anything else that you, Mike, or Sandy wanted to mention about the event that you went to on Sunday? Or, I mean, obviously we got your email, so. Okay. So I think that takes us almost all the way to the end. So Mark, I know in the email that you sent me, it sounds like you're having some struggles with your health, and do you want to say this is probably your last meeting? I can see that you're not muted, but I can't hear you for whatever reason, Mark. No. No. Well, it's okay. My thought was, oh,
Is it better?
that I can hear you now.
Okay. Phew. Techie. Yeah. See, that's one of the problems. I'm an IT guy. I should have known right away where to look for that. But one of the things I'm going through is problems with my multiple sclerosis. I'm having exacerbations and cognitive issues. Matter of fact, it was recommended that by the neuropsychologist that, matter of fact, tomorrow I have I'll be on week 2 of a 12-week session for it has to deal with neuroplasticity, how to learn things again, because I'm forgetting things, short-term, long-term memories and the rest. And some of the concepts, like I understand RFP, I did this before in the Navy, so, but it's the other intricacies that are involved with, I would have a hard time relating that to other people. And be more of an asset, I should say.
Sure. So if it's okay with you, Mark, then we'll just consider you to step down and then we'll look to find some other people. Is that okay?
That's fine, yeah, because then again, if there's anything, I also talk with Bob Vestinto, so if there's anything, he can probably translate, if nothing else, for me.
Sure.
Okay,
All right. Well, thank you for your time and for being with us on this process.
I tried.
All right. Well, you take care. And so I guess that's going to take us down to our next meeting, which is Tuesday, June 13th at Hammond Hall and over Zoom. And unless there's anything else, we can have a motion to adjourn.
I'll motion it if I have audio.
All right.
Second.
And all those in favor.
Aye.
All right. Thank you all, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much, Roy.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for everything, Roy.
Thank you. Take care.